In this episode of Halloween Tales, we present The Man Who Died Over an Egg, the story of Karl Jackson, a young man who lost his life over a Halloween prank gone horribly wrong. Karl Jackson was a 21-year-old computer programmer at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter in Manhattan. He was smart, hardworking, and careful, the kind of young man any parent would be proud of. For most people, Halloween is the one night each year where fear becomes fun. But according to his family, Karl wasn't the type to go out on Halloween. He used to say it was too dangerous, and living in the Bronx in the 1990s, maybe he wasn't wrong. But that year he made an exception. Karl's fiancée, Darlene Oliver, a 26-year-old teacher, had a 9-year-old son named Clyde, and he had been invited to a Halloween party. The plan was for the adults to take Clyde to the party, and then after the kids' party was over, they would drop Clyde off at home with the babysitter. Then Karl and Darlene would go to an adult Halloween party that they had been invited to. This was supposed to be a quick, easy trip with some family time mixed in. The air outside smelled of rain and mischief, the kind of Bronx Halloween where tricks and treats were the backdrop for the night. They got in the car. There was laughing and talking with some music mixed in. As they started their trip, there was no way to know that within a few short hours, Karl would be dead, and Darlene and Clyde's lives would never be the same. As Karl drove through the Crotona Park section of the Bronx, it happened. At around 11 p.m., they heard a loud thud as something hit the car. Then another. It was eggs. A group of teenagers were standing on the corner throwing eggs at passing cars, laughing as yolks splattered and stuck to car windshields and hoods. Initially, Karl tried to find humor in the incident, but then he became angry. Understandably, he was protective of both Darlene and Clyde, but also of the car that he had worked hard to buy. So he opened the car door and stepped out. Witnesses said he didn't yell or threaten. He simply told the teens to stop. "Cut it out," he said. "You could hurt somebody." But instead of apologizing or running away, the group shouted back, mocking him, cursing him, and closing in around them. The tension was immediate, and Karl realized that the situation could turn ugly. So he did what most people would call the smart thing. He turned around, got back in the car, and shut the door. And then the gun came out. Before Karl could pull away, one of the teenagers raised a handgun and he pointed it through the car window. And then, without a word, he pulled the trigger. The bullet struck Karl in the head and he died instantly. Halloween laughter turned to screams. Neighbors rushed outside. Police sirens cut through the night air. By the time officers arrived, Karl Jackson, at 21 years old, was dead. Darlene sat frozen, covered in glass, her son sobbing in the back seat. The street lights flickered over the chaotic scene and Karl's lifeless body, his life stolen in a second of senseless violence. News of the shooting hit the Bronx like a shockwave, another Halloween prank gone wrong. But this time it had claimed the life of a young man with everything ahead of him. Karl's father, Karl Sr., told the New York Times, quote, "A young life was snuffed out over nothing. He never used to go out on Halloween. He said it was too dangerous, but this year he wanted to take the child out." For Karl's mother, Gloria, the pain was unbearable. She later said, quote, "We were just devastated. We never thought anyone in our family would be murdered, especially on a holiday, for something so stupid." It took the Jackson family years before they could even talk about what happened, and each Halloween since has brought the memories flooding back. The sound of sirens, the smell of eggs on pavement, and the moment that changed everything. After Karl was killed, police moved quickly. Witnesses identified 17-year-old Curtis Sterling as the shooter. He was charged with second-degree murder and criminal possession of a weapon. At the trial, prosecutors called the killing a tragedy born of arrogance and impulse. The defense argued that it was an accident, but the jury didn't believe it. and Sterling was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Karl's family found no comfort in that number. 20 years would come and go, but their son would not. It's been over 2 decades since that night in 1998. Karl Jackson's story has faded from the headlines, but for his family, the wound never healed. He was a son, a fiance, a mentor, and a young man whose entire life was just beginning. And in a single senseless moment, it ended. Every Halloween, as costumes fill the streets and laughter echoes through the neighborhood, Gloria Jackson sits quietly at her table. She writes a message on a Halloween card. The message is, "I'm glad you're still there." She seals the envelope and then she sends it to her son's murderer. It's a simple message from a mother whose love endures and whose loss will never be forgotten. If you found this story powerful, please like, share, and subscribe. And this Halloween, stay safe, stay kind, and remember Karl Jackson, the young man who died over an egg.